Hello, it's Jorbs, YouTube exclusive Jorbs. I wrote a book. It's entitled Before We Go Live, Navigating the Abusive World of Online Entertainment. This is a book about my own experience and the experiences of my friends working in the world of online entertainment, both as content creators and as people who support content creators, as managers or editors or what have you. And it's not just about running a show, it's also about securing sponsors and going to conventions and interacting with an audience. And it's more tangibly, I think, ultimately, it's a synthesis of all of those things and experiences that I've had and seen my friends had and talked to them about into an attempt to make sense of it and an attempt to give a guide for doing good in this world. For, surviving the parasocial relationships and the abusive managers and the entitled viewers and whatever, to take what is at its core like a webcam and a microphone and an audience with a chat room and do something good in the world. So that's what the book is about. And I've had a lot of people ask me if I would read the book, if I would be the person who did the audiobook, etc., because they like audiobooks and they like my voice. And I just can't. There are two big reasons. One is I'm not a voice actor, so I'm not capable of like putting the right emotion into the text as I read it as a script. And two, it's just too hard for me to read this. There are chapters in here that I wrote and then didn't read again to edit for 3 months because I emotionally couldn't. This is a book where a general goal of mine as a creator is to be honest and authentic with my audience. I think my audience is smart. I think that if I give them true information, they can do good things with it. And so I want to give them as much true information as possible. And an advantage of writing a book is that I don't have to do it live. I can write something that I'm not sure I'm actually comfortable ever saying in the world, and the act of writing it doesn't say it. You never saw a lot of the sentences that I wrote because eventually I decided, yeah, that does cross a boundary for me or for my friend. I can't publish that. But I got to write this book and I got to live on that boundary where I could push the limits and be like, am I comfortable talking about this? Maybe, maybe not. Let's write it and see. And so for me, the act of sitting down and reading this without emotionally breaking down is just not not really accessible, at least not in full. But what I can do and what I'd like to do at least a little bit of, I don't know, I'm going to make one video like this, I guess, and if it has good reception, maybe I'll make more, is I'd like to read some of the chapters and passages in the book and just talk about writing them and what it's like to write a book and what it was like to write this passage and stuff like that. As I do so, at least in the places where I'm more comfortable with the text, just to introduce people who watch on YouTube to what I've done, because I know that buying and reading an entire book is a lot of work. You can request it at the library if you want. There's an audiobook now, there's an ebook, so if the time it takes for a book to deliver or having to deal with a paperback book is a problem, that's solved. But yeah, I would like to present this to people who just watch on YouTube because this is the best content that I've ever made. I spent 2 years on this. I worked with professional editors. I interviewed dozens of people and spent 100 hours doing it. If you like my deep dive content and my videos where I spend an hour going through a slideshow talking about a concept and stuff like that, this is that, except I worked on it for 2 years instead of doing it in one take. So I think it's good, and I'm hoping that lots of other people do as well. If you had read the book and enjoyed it, leave a review on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Goodreads, because I'd love for this to get out there into the wider world, into readers who haven't already heard of me. I want to get some bad reviews. I want to get some people who don't know who I am, who picked the book up and just like, whoa, this guy's trash. 1-star review. Because right now it's like all 5-star reviews, which is great. I love that you love me, but we gotta get it in front of people who don't as well. Anyway, the first chapter of the book is called Numbers. Numbers. Sometimes I try to track all the numbers. As of June 2022, I follow 492 people on Twitter, which is far too many for me to actually care about, and I'm followed by 8,555, which is even worse. 60,000 people subscribe to my YouTube channel, and 109,000 follow my Twitch stream. The numbers don't make much sense to me anymore. They are too large for me to understand. When I was starting out, I cared about smaller numbers. For a while, I cared about paying rent. I made $3 an hour, I made $4, I made $8. After a year and a half of streaming full-time, I was finally making minimum wage. A couple of years after that, I was signed to a professional team and signing contracts to advertise products to my audience for $1,000 an hour. That sentence was tricky to work out because I signed contracts for $1,000 an hour pretty regularly. Like, my contracting rate is, it's variable depending on who's paying me for what and the time of year and how busy I am and stuff like that. But that's not an unreasonable rate to get for like showing off a new game on stream or something like that. It was really hard to phrase that question to communicate that I wasn't always getting paid $1,000 an hour for all of the work that I do. Because a lot of the work I do is like right now, sitting here recording this, I'm not getting paid in any way for doing this. I guess once it goes onto YouTube, the video will be live, and like honestly, I pay somebody to do all the information in the thumbnail for YouTube, and I will be happy if this makes more in advertising revenue than I pay for it to be published. So I definitely don't make $1,000 an hour all the time. I originally introduced the book with a different chapter. The chapter was called Drowning, and through the book there's a very heavy metaphor repeating leitmotif about the ocean and like storms and waves and like trying to survive above it as a boat, just being tossed around by the tide. And so I originally introduced the book by talking about how I almost drowned as a child and the way that it felt. I remember still, I was like 3 or 4, I was underwater, and like for a moment, I like just was like playing around by a pool in the shallow end and it was fine, and then I walked too far into the deep end and I was underwater, and that was enough to kill me. Pools are dangerous. But I remember for a moment I felt so powerful, like I was floating. What a unique feeling. And I was trying to like maneuver my arms and legs. I wasn't like panicked. I was like, what is this new space? What can I do with it? Even as a small child. But then ultimately I was drowning and going to die. And sometimes living in the online world can feel like that professionally. And I mean that like in a metaphorical sense, where like dying means like an ego death or succumbing to burnout and having to quit your profession and stuff. I also mean it in a very literal sense. The book talks about suicides and things like that. But ultimately, that was like too deep to bring a reader for chapter 1. So instead, I started with like something that a viewer could immediately touch base on. Like, yeah, I know all of these creators. They have like 1 million followers or something. I wonder what that's like. And so I brought you in kind of with the thing that you see, so that I could try to then take you to the things that I see and think are important and worth talking about, and maybe not on the, like, not the first thing that a viewer or reader would think about when thinking about content. Anyway, I stopped trying to distinguish all my followers back when I had a few hundred. At the time, I figured I could meet and learn about 5 new people per day if I really spent energy on it. But in the time it took me to do that, 10 more would have followed my channel. And it got really out of hand, and I started gaining hundreds of new followers every day. Nowadays, there are people whom I know nothing about who have watched 1,000 hours of my channel and tipped thousands of dollars to me. My friend celebrates her 3 millionth follower. A viewer announces their 60th consecutive month subscribed to my channel. Friend being Hafu, by the way. Way to go, Hafu. Um, it's like, it's always interesting in this book whether I name somebody or not. Like, some of it's my comfort talking about them without consent in some situations. Some situations it's just like, I didn't want to bring this up to ask my friend if they were okay with me like mentioning their name and talking about this thing. So it's like nicer to just not force them to have that conversation about past lived trauma and instead leave them anonymous. Some of it's that they actually wanted to be anonymous because sometimes friends would talk to me about things in interviews that they weren't comfortable having published. So some of that stuff is, I mean, there were also things they talked about with me that I literally didn't publish at all, but there were things that they talked about with me that they weren't comfortable having their name attached to, but did want to go into the book, I guess. And sometimes it's just like there are too many different names because I did a lot of interviews. I did 7 years of meeting people online and going to conventions and stuff. So sometimes it's just like a bit much to, I don't know. Hafu is so cool, but chapter 1, paragraph 4 is maybe too soon to name drop her. There's a lot of editing going on with language in streaming because say our reader is like the mother of a gamer who's interested in finding out what streaming is all about or something like that. Are they gonna know what it means to subscribe to a streamer and cheer bits? Like, probably not. We live in a strange world where we have very like branded words for supporting creators, which is probably deliberate because the companies who are creating these ways to support creators want to be able to take a big cut and don't want us to think critically about what's happening. And so we have cheering bits and subscribing. So yeah, I didn't spend a ton of time breaking all of that apart at any point in the book, really. It's an interesting point to make and discuss maybe, but didn't seem salient to the main narrative. There was a spot I could have put it, I guess. I wrote maybe 5 times as much as I published, just in terms of like the first chapter that I had written I completely axed, for example, but also in terms of like writing out paragraphs, which I eventually just turned into a sentence because it was like, oh, this drags and isn't that relevant. And sure, maybe somebody would find it interesting, but there's better stuff to get to. And rewriting sentences for clarity over and over and over again. I could have written more. I don't know. I don't think there will be a second book on this topic, but maybe there'll be a second book on something else someday. Today I am streaming Slay the Spire. I am constructing a deck of cards that I can play to protect myself and attack my enemies, and I am using it to ascend to the top of a fantasy spire, battling enemies ranging from tiny lice to charismatic bandits to ritualistic cultists, and slay the corrupt heart which pumps blood into its walls from its peak. I've streamed 5,033 hours of this game, and I'm the first person in the world to beat it while rotating through its characters at the highest difficulty 7, 8, 9, 11, 14, 15, and 16 times in a row. Today, after almost a month of play without losing, I am positioned to reach 17. One game usually takes me about 90 minutes to play, but in a high-stakes situation like this, it can take more like 3 days. 3 hours to get into my zone, 4 hours for the run itself, full of calculation and strategizing, and then 2 days after to calm down again, to ease my shoulders back from their stressed and coiled hunch, and to be able to feel the ground under my hips again when I lie on my back, to convince my body to sleep for 8 hours in a row. And then if I've won, I'll start the process again to try for 18. This is a longer paragraph, and there's a very deliberate juxtaposition happening where I am I'm trying to like present my expertise at the game and the fact that I have achievements in the game and present you with a situation where it sounds like I should be really excited that I'm going to achieve a new thing, right? But instead of talking about like the excitement at the achievement, etc., 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 I'm very deliberately talking about how stressful this is, how hard it is to do. And like I stripped that down more later, but yeah, one of the things with Slay the Spire for me has always been that I don't care very much whether I can win at Slay the Spire. This is not important to me in much of any way for much of my life. I care about connecting with my audience. I care about having a good time on stream. I care about being a good role model. But whether I am a great Slay the Spire player or not is largely a conversation that other people have about me, and not something that I care much about. And when I'm in situations where I have to engage with that, like because I'm about to set a new world record for the game or something like that, I mostly find it really gross and irritating and frustrating. Um, the reason I play a single player indie strategy game instead of a game like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, which is deliberately built for competition, is that I don't like competition that much. That's not what I'm looking for in my strategy games. And so, yeah, I talk about more of that later, but I think again, this is like the goal of the chapter being shown again in a smaller way in one paragraph where I'm like, yeah, I'm doing really well in this game and I'm about to set a world record. Here are the reasons that it kind of sucks. So, anyway. The stress isn't about the game. I have 2,422 viewers watching me right now, and when this run is posted to YouTube, it will reach another 20,000. The viewers compare me to 3 other prominent Slay the Spire players. I don't actually... It's weird, kind of, because that sounds really pointed, but I don't actually know which 3 I'd pick for that. It's really just a sentence that tries to establish that people are comparing me to other people while using a number, because the chapter is numbers. It's all about the numbers, yeah. 12 people have suggested that I should have done something differently in the last 5 minutes. I've been told that I don't understand how to play some of the game's characters and that it's inappropriate for me to give opinions about them. I've been told that my voice is nice and that it's annoying, and asked why it sounds the way it does. I've been told to dress differently, to play differently, to speak differently, to stop trying to be funny, to stop explaining my thoughts about the game, to stream at a different time. I've been told I shouldn't care about winning so much, and that I should care about winning more than I do, and that I should stop playing quick runs rotating through the characters and instead spend 6 hours per run on the same character for 2 months straight in order to prove that I'm actually good at the game. Thousands of people love me, but I also hear from those to whom I seem arrogant, naive, boring, slow, old, fat, awkward, insecure, and so on. Some of them seem happy to share these opinions of me. So, yeah, I mean, this is like, oh, by the way, here's some stuff the book might actually be about, being introduced to a reader. Yeah. That's the sort of paragraph where it's like, it's a little bit difficult for me to read it, and honestly, my brain is completely empty. I have nothing interesting further to add, unfortunately. At least not in a live recording. As I enter the final fight of the game, one enemy away from 17 wins in a row, dozens of messages from my viewers get overwhelming. Dozens of viewers are suggesting strategies for the fight. Excuse me. Dozens of viewers are suggesting strategies for the fight and telling me not to forget certain details, and I can't hear myself think. The moderator decides to set the channel to emote-only mode so no one can send text messages anymore. With the click of a button, I see the community I've built, where I've spent 10,000 hours talking with my viewers about school and life in a pandemic and wars and charity and love, reduced to a flood of silly image spam. You know, one of the probably the most influential thing on my mood and happiness as a streamer is what's going on in my chat window, which is, I wouldn't say I'm the only person in the world for whom that's true. I think that's fairly common, but it's not always the case. Like, I think there are streamers for whom the chat window is very, like, removed from them, and they're very focused on their game or their tournament they're in. They really care about winning it, and that's where their emotional highs and lows are coming from largely, is like, or they might be focused largely on like creating good content. And so like if they get a really good joke in their Among Us lobby or something like that, that makes them really happy and excited. But I really feel like my emotional state as a content creator lives and dies with the interactions with other human beings who I'm surrounded by. And so for me, emote only mode in my chat always feels like I've just lost the entire reason that I'm streaming. Like, I am here to read your messages and laugh at your jokes and hear about your day. That's what brings me joy. And yeah, when I was struggling a lot with backseating, a lot of people would say like, just don't read chat. Like, like my job was to play Slay the Spire, and that's what I was interested in. And the chat was this completely superfluous thing that didn't matter. But the reality is that a lot of the time when I'm streaming, like 90% of my energy is focused on the chat or thinking about what I'm going to say next to build on the conversation that's in the chat. And like 10% of my energy is on the game I'm playing. Sometimes I don't even really know what's going on in the game. I've played a lot of games. I can sometimes play them kind of with my brainstem and think a lot more about talking with you all. So, um, yeah, I mean, I remember this moment. There's a reason that this moment where I was trying to play Run 17 and I got to the final fight and the chat got so bad and toxic and stressful for me that a moderator had to put it into emote only mode is something that I think about still. That really sucked. It really sucks that like the achievements in Slay the Spire that I can achieve come attached with comparing me to other people, telling me what to do, getting really invested in my results in the game instead of really invested in my community and my personality and the things that I care about. It sucks because like it feels like being punished for doing well at work, sort of. Um, hmm. it's it's just like it's a puzzle working out how to redirect the energy of your channel to the things that you care about when a lot of your channel is there because they want to watch you play Slay the Spire, you know? Um, and yeah, also playing Slay the Spire is so like easy. And I don't mean that in the sense of like the game's easy. I mean that in the sense of it is easy to sit down and play a video game for 4 hours while talking about it. That is a 4 hour long live show. It's not the easiest thing in the world to create a 4 hour long live show, but in terms of difficulty, a 4 hour long live show where you just play the same game and talk about it for 4 hours is pretty easy compared to the other things you could make a live show about for 4 hours. So there's always the struggle of I want to create a channel and a community where people are talking about empowering others and working for charity and also just like books they read that they like. I just want to like hang out with people. But at the same time, there's a lot more like emotional vulnerability for me and a lot more effort and a lot more external energy I'm having to bring in order to run a show that focuses more on that. So that has always been a struggle for me as a content creator. Anyway, a huge part of like my success as a content creator was the YouTube algorithm picking up my Spire videos and recommending them to everybody who searched for Slay the Spire, which excellent for my channel, caused a lot of growth, also caused a tremendous amount of stress because while growing a community is great, if you grow a community and a huge amount of the growth comes through a channel that's bringing people to your community for something that you don't actually care that much about, it's that causes a lot of like friction and stress and and work. Um, I I love content creation. Slay the Spire is a pretty good game. I'm happy to play it. I still enjoy playing it. It is not the thing that is the most important thing in the world to me, and so being defined by a lot of people as like, oh, the Slay the Spire guy and stuff like that is just like, am I really? Nothing else you can think about. Anyway, okay. In the end, I can't focus on the fight. I make a small mistake, and it's enough to make me lose. Maybe I would have lost anyway. Technically, I could go back and find out, but I don't care. 17 is not actually one of the numbers which matters to me. I care about trying my best for my viewers, but there are much more important goals than winning at this video game. I didn't really go into this in much depth. It's like too early in the book, basically, to do it. But I just like straight up had an anxiety attack in the final fight of the run to win 17 in a row. Like my heart was fucking 120, 130 beats per minute. Not because I was excited about the run, but because I couldn't make it go lower because my entire body was tensing up and my shoulders were cramping and my hips were closed and my feet were curled. And I was afraid to look at the chat window on my screen and I was just like really upset that the thing that I'd worked for a month to, or well, for years really, but also for the last month more specifically, to achieve was resulting in people yelling at me to do certain things and breaking the channel rules I'd said about backseating and, in my opinion, communicated very clearly and shit. This was during the pandemic, and I was having a fairly large number of anxiety attacks on stream during the pandemic. There were days when I was, I used to dread the Act 4 store in Slay the Spire because it was the place where people would backseat the most. I used to finish a run, and sometimes I'd like go walk outside for 15 minutes to get my heart rate below 100 beats per minute because like I just was really, really, really struggling with how much my channel was no longer people who were interested in having a nice, rosy, fun conversation about life with me, and were instead interested in challenging my decision in Slay the Spire to pick a certain card because they had seen a different streamer succeed by doing something else. And like fuck those people. They weren't ever invited. The channel rules were set to try to communicate that I didn't want that to be my life, but that was my life through the pandemic for months, day in and day out, and I fucking hated it, and I was absolutely having anxiety attacks. So I don't really know. I forgot that Flurry of Blows would come back and give me... I forget if it was like, maybe I had like an ornamental fan and a talk to the hand or something, and it was going to give me one more block net or something like that. But it was enough to survive the turn if I remembered that Flurry of Blows was going to come back, but I didn't. And would I have if I was playing Slay the Spire in a way that let me like focus and be more level-headed and wasn't actively having an anxiety attack? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, a large part of why I like pulled back from trying to really like compete and do the best I possibly could at Slay the Spire was because I was having anxiety attacks while I was playing the game. So it didn't seem reasonable. The game has no tournaments. It has no prize pool for competition. My viewership by and large doesn't really care if I am like my content where I set a world record in Slay the Spire doesn't really get more views than my other content. Like the vast majority of my core viewership just doesn't really care. It's just fucking stressful and miserable. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like Slay the Spire was like a very cozy single player indie game community for a while, and then it was really cool because it felt so malleable, and there were like women in the community who played Slay the Spire, and I mean there still are a few for what it's worth, but a number of my friends played Slay the Spire, and then like increasingly it felt like those people either like decided they'd played enough Slay the Spire and moved on, or got forced out of the Slay the Spire community by new things that were happening in it. And the people who stuck around in Slay the Spire, a large segment of them were people who are very competitive and wanted a way to compete that could exist outside of tournaments. Because in Slay the Spire, you set your own rules. So you can say like, well, the thing that I'm going to compete for is I'm going to play every single day at the absolute maximum skill level that I can, 6 hours per run. And then I'm going to publish my results and say whether I'm better than other people or not. And coexisting with that as somebody who people like to say is good at the game, like, yo. Anyway, there are smaller numbers, and those are more important to me. Sorry, the last sentence of the last paragraph was, I care about trying my best for my viewers, but there are much more important things than winning at this video game. There are smaller numbers, and those are the most important to me. In my inbox, there are 3 emails from viewers crediting me with huge positive changes in their lives. There's one message on Twitter from an alcoholic asking me for money. There's one DM on Discord expressing suicidal ideation and requesting my help. There are 5 sponsored streams this week that I need to prepare for. this isn't from exactly one snippet of time that I had all of these things, but this is like a sampling of the things that have happened in my inboxes that have been important. It's like at some point in time that might have been true, but it's not like I looked as I was writing the chapter and all of those things were happening at once. And there is one person I trust to make all of this approachable for me. Her name is Hannah, and she has been working with me for 3 years. She has passwords to 6 of my online accounts and access to a bank account, which she uses to manage and pay my 2 other employees and a variety of contractors she hires on my behalf. She reads and responds to emails for me, but she's never been on my stream with me, and the vast majority of my viewers don't even know she exists. Hopefully that can change, by the way. The dedication in this book is this is for Hannah. She'd like for you to read it too. This is a book about Hannah as much as it's about me. This isn't a story about the big numbers. It's about the small ones that Hannah and I deal with while the stream is offline. It's about the unique, bizarre, and dangerous world the 2 of us have to navigate before I go live. On this day, I have 3,581 notifications on Discord, almost all of which I ignore. By the way, I'm up to over 9,000 though. but when I was writing, I had 3,500. As I end my stream, defeated by the Spire, I see that there is one from Hannah in the private server we use to organize everything that I put out into the world. I don't know if I'm about to be invited to fly to Los Angeles to meet a celebrity, or if she's found a contractor for art I'm trying to commission. Maybe a viewer has requested I sign a birthday card for their husband, or her ex has sent her flowers to her house again. What I do know is that with this message, this single notification, the other numbers have already stopped mattering. That's chapter 1. It's a short chapter. I mean, it's only 4 pages, but it did the trick for me. It like presented the part of my job that maybe I'm known for, and as I talked about that, I became extremely stressed out and upset. And then it presented the part of my job that I actually think is important and want to talk to you about. And you know, the second that I started reading a paragraph about Hannah, I just felt happy. So, yeah, and like calm and warm. There are 2 types. So I get lots of notifications as a content creator. And there are lots of notifications that I do not care about at all. Like a Discord ping, I literally don't even look anymore. I get a lot of those and do not care what they say, or like I'm in lots of servers where like a lot of them are just like a going live announcement kind of thing. I don't look at Discord friend requests. The number on that button is 48 right now. I do not look at Steam notifications in any way. The number on that is like, I don't know, 55 messages apparently. So there are lots of notifications which I don't have to keep up with, and so I don't. Existing in the world of content creation, like I'm on platforms like Twitch and YouTube and Twitter. These are platforms which, like in Discord, these are places which try to get your attention by pinging you about things. And this is an intentional thing that they're doing in their business model. They want your attention. So keep using the platform, look at ads that they serve you, tell your friends about the platform so your friends will use their platform, etc. And existing professionally in this space for like 7 or 8 years, like it just isn't sustainable to look at all the notifications. Like you just have to, in my opinion, and I know very few people for whom this isn't true, I guess, but in my opinion, you have to pick some notifications that you care about and not care about the other ones. So I don't care about my Discord notifications. I do not care about like messages that I get on Twitch. I do not care about messages I get on Steam, etc. But there are 3 types of notifications that actually like I do get pretty excited about. There are Twitter DMs. For some reason, my Twitter DMs are just so nice, like all the time. I just get nice messages from people. I have received one thirsty message with like a photo talking about how I was missing out. But it was like tasteful and wasn't that weird or creepy, honestly. Like, I mean, I have lots of friends who are women for whom checking DMs on something like Twitter is like, oh, it's a picture of a penis. That's not my experience. My experience is like a lot of people who I am very fond of reaching out and saying hi and asking how I'm doing and sharing something they think I'd enjoy. So I get really excited about Twitter DMs still. Twitter notifications, not so much. Like that number just says 20 plus a lot. I'll click on it to clear them because it's very quick to clear them and it's a central part of the platform, it feels like, but I don't care that the number's high. Anyway, so yeah, there's Twitter DMs, there's emails that go to my work inbox. I monitor that. Hannah is the one who actually like deals with most of those emails, but I monitor that, and I regularly get like game keys for games that I'm actually pretty excited about, which is cool. But more excitingly, that's where like I'll get paragraphs long messages from viewers who want to like privately reach out and thank me for what I do. And a lot of those messages are just incredibly nice and heartfelt and thoughtful. And it's really nice when viewers like will share a part of themselves that connects with what I do in a way that I can understand. Like I still remember years ago receiving a message from a father who told me that they had bonded with their autistic child over Slay the Spire and watching my content. And how can you not like, how is it possible to not be excited about getting a message like that? Like, in a world where you have this overwhelming, suffocating noise of like, are you the best Slay the Spire player? What's the right thing to do? This like cave troll standing over your shoulder, just yelling at you in your professional life constantly. To have like a little message pop up on your screen saying like, hey, I'm a dad and I love my kid. And it was really hard for me to connect with my kid for a long time, but we found Slay the Spire and we connect on that so well. And we thank you for that. Like, thing I frankly do not give a fuck about, leave me alone. Wow, humanity. It's so lovely. So I get quite excited to read emails like that, and I try to respond to all of these like messages and emails, maybe just a sentence because I don't have the energy to write paragraphs to everybody, but these things bring me tremendous joy. And then the third thing that I get really excited about is any activity at all on my work Discord server, which is kind of interesting because like I have a decent amount of burnout around my job. Most of the notifications having to do with my job cause me to want to like detach from them and make me feel exhausted. But the server, which is literally only my work, it is literally only people who I paid to do things for me at my job. I get really excited seeing a notification from that because that's a place where like I have chosen my team to do the work that we're doing. They know their job and they're good at it. I get to pay them for it. So like I get to help them pay their rent and get married and move into a house and stuff like that. And oh my god. there are parts of this job which are just so wonderful and so rewarding, and a good number of them are in here. I think I tried to spend about half of the book on things which made me tremendously happy and about half of the book on things that made me tremendously sad. And I didn't bother putting many of the things in the middle into the book. So it's the sort of book that can make you laugh and cry, sometimes on the same page, is what I've heard from some people. And it's a sort of book that can make you angry, but can also give you hope. I feel vaguely pretentious now talking about it this way, but I worked really fucking hard on this, so maybe I'm allowed to be a little bit pretentious. You should like check that out and read it. If this stuff was interesting to you, please do. I may record another one of these, or I may not. I silenced a call from my mother, so I'm going to go see what she wants right now. My phone doesn't ring unless it's like my mother or my dad. So yeah, it's usually like worth picking up. Oh well. Yeah. And yeah, if people seem to enjoy this video, I could definitely see myself doing it again for maybe a couple more chapters. There are 20 chapters total. I don't think I'll be doing it for all 20. There are a few in there that I just couldn't do. But there are some that might be fun. Some other ones that might be fun. I hope you enjoyed numbers. Let me know. Bye-bye.